There is a man on your street who mows his own lawn in a faded shirt, drives a sedan closer to 10 years old than 2, and clips a coupon for cereal at the checkout. A few neighbors feel sorry for him. They have it backwards. He holds more money than almost everyone else on the block combined. 3 doors down, the couple with the leased German SUV and the rarely used boat sit one slow month from real trouble. One household is wealthy. The other only looks it. By the end, you will know how to tell them apart. So how does the guy in the faded shirt end up worth more than the surgeon with the spotless electric car and the second home in the mountains? It comes down to 2 words almost everyone treats as identical, and they are nothing alike. Those words are income and wealth. Income is the money that flows through your hands, your paycheck, your bonus, the number you say out loud when somebody asks what you make. Wealth is a different animal entirely. Wealth is what stays behind after the spending stops. The part that quietly belongs to you and keeps working while you sleep. A person can carry a towering income and almost no wealth. Another can carry a modest income and a genuine fortune. The surgeon and the lawnmower are living proof of both halves of that sentence. People who study the rich for a living have a pair of names for this split. One group they call the income statement affluent. Their lives look expensive because every dollar that arrives turns around and leaves, often a little faster than it came in. Their entire financial story lives on the flow, the show, the part everyone can see. The other group they call the balance sheet affluent. That money lives in accounts and assets and ownership invisible from the curb on purpose. You were never meant to see it, and that invisibility is the whole point. Now for the part that reorders how you see your own street. America is packed with that second group, far more packed than the movies ever let on. Depending on how you count, somewhere around 24 million millionaires live in the United States right now, which lands close to 1 in every 11 households. They are not all tucked behind gates in the hills. A huge share sit in ordinary subdivisions, in homes you have driven past 1,000 times without a flicker of attention. More than half of American millionaires live in a neighborhood where the average household earns below $75,000 a year. Roughly 1 in 3 lives in a zip code where the typical home is worth less than the national median. 6 in 10 live in a house valued under $500,000. Sit with that for a moment. The wealthy are not clustered where you assumed. They are sprinkled through the exact kind of street you probably live on. And the version of wealth you have been sold, the one with the watches and the supercars and the rooftop pools, describes a tiny, loud minority. The quiet majority looks like your slightly boring neighbor, the one you never think twice about. None of that is an accident. It is the predictable output of a simple machine, and once you see the machine, you can never unsee it again. Part of why all this stays hidden is that almost everything you watch is built to show you the loud minority. A feed full of rented jets and watch reveals is not a window into wealth. It is a window into spending, and spending photographs beautifully while saving photographs like absolutely nothing. Nobody films the index fund. No algorithm pushes the paid-off Honda into 1 billion views. The man quietly maxing out his retirement account at the kitchen table will never trend because there is simply nothing to see. And that invisibility is the exact trait that let him grow rich in the first place. So you absorb a badly warped sample of reality. You see the spenders on a loop, you almost never see the savers. And you walk away quietly convinced that wealth must look like a performance when it nearly always looks like restraint. Correct the sample, and the whole world rearranges. Let me run that machine in front of you with 2 real feeling people, because numbers do something to your brain that adjectives never manage. Meet Walter and Denise, 4 houses apart on the same cul-de-sac. Walter pulls in $85,000 a year doing quiet, steady work. Denise and her husband bring home $250,000 between them. On paper, Denise wins by a mile. She earns nearly 3 times what Walter does. So watch what unfolds across 25 years. Walter saves a fifth of everything he earns. On $85,000, that is $17,000 a year flowing into the market year after year in a boring, automatic, joyless-looking way. At a historical average return of about 7% annually, Walter closes out that quarter century with roughly $1,075,000. He crossed into millionaire territory in a faded shirt and an aging sedan. And not a single neighbor noticed. Denise earns far more, yet her life quietly expanded to swallow all of it. A bigger house, nicer cars on a rolling lease, vacations that each had to outdo the last. After everything cleared, she and her husband set aside about a 20th of their income, which on $250,000 works out to $12,500 a year. Same window of 25 years. Same 7%. Denise finishes with about $790,000. She out-earned Walter nearly 3-to-1 across her whole career, and she still ended up with less money than the man down the street clipping cereal coupons. That is the kind of result that makes accountants weep. What separated them was never the salary, it was the gap. The space between what comes in and what goes back out is the only number that builds wealth, and it is the number almost nobody defends. You can run a small income with a wide gap. You can run a giant income with a gap of 0, or worse, a gap that quietly runs in reverse. Walter guarded his gap like it was oxygen. Denise never even measured hers. Stretch the idea further, and it gets close to unfair. Take 2 savers side by side. One parks $10,000 a year. The other parks $30,000 a year. Across 20 years at 7%, the first lands near $410,000. The second lands near $1,230,000. The distance between them, more than $800,000, came entirely from how much each one chose not to spend. Each one faced the very same market, the very same timeline, the very same returns. The only lever either pulled was how much they refused to spend. Even a single purchase tells the same story once you follow it all the way out. Think about the car in the flashy neighbor's driveway. A $70,000 luxury SUV against a sensible used sedan around $28,000. That difference of $42,000 invested instead at 7% becomes about $95,000 in roughly 12 years. Repeat that one swap every decade across a 40-year driving life, and the choice quietly compounds into something north of $1 million. Or look at it as a monthly payment. $700 a month is a fairly normal luxury car note. Pour that same $700 into the market every month for 30 years instead, and you are looking at roughly $850,000. The flashy car did not cost a payment. It cost a fortune that the buyer will simply never see. The very same leak runs through the small stuff too, just lower to the ground. A streaming service you forgot you even pay for. One subscription that has renewed 3 times since you last opened the app. A daily habit that feels like nothing in the moment, yet quietly adds up to a car payment by the end of the year. None of these register as wealth decisions, which is precisely why they drain so much without resistance. Your quiet millionaire is not necessarily more frugal in any dramatic way. They are simply awake to the leaks, while everyone around them lets the boat take on water 1 cup at a time and then wonders why it never seems to rise. That engine, hidden and humming, sits under every quiet millionaire on your block. Now let me hand you the field guide, because you came here to spot them, and the tells are sharper than you would expect. Tell number 1 is the car, and it is the loudest signal once you know how to listen. In the research that first cracked this whole thing open, More than half of the millionaires surveyed had never paid more than $30,000 for a vehicle in their entire lives. Not their current car. Any car, ever. For years, the single most common make among American millionaires has been Toyota. Not a luxury badge anywhere in sight. The pattern repeats endlessly. Someone buys a sensible sedan, pays it off without drama, then keeps it for 10, 12, 15 years until the odometer reads like a phone number. The shiny lease in the other driveway is a monthly payment dressed up as success. The paid-off Camry with the small dent is a balance sheet wearing a disguise. Tell number 2 lives on the wrist and in the closet. When researchers sat down with more than 1,000 millionaires, half of them had never paid above roughly $235 for a watch, never above about $400 for a suit, never above around $140 for a pair of shoes. Those were the figures in the landmark study, and the spirit behind them has barely budged. The quiet rich refuse to walk around as advertisements. A person draped head to toe in designer logos is far more likely to be financing the look than to own it free and clear. The same goes for the phone that must be the newest model, the handbag with the loud logo, the sunglasses costing more than a week of groceries, each one a receipt for a performance rather than a sign of the wealth underneath. Real wealth tends to be strangely comfortable being underestimated. Tell number 3 is the house that sits smaller than the income could easily afford. Remember, 6 in 10 millionaires live in a home worth under $500,000. They could swing the mansion, they ran the math on the mansion and walked away. A bigger house is never just a bigger mortgage. It drags along bigger taxes, bigger insurance, bigger utilities, bigger repairs, bigger everything. Forever, your quiet millionaire stares at that staircase of costs and decides the smaller house buys something the mansion never could, which is freedom. So they stay put. Neighbors assume they simply could not climb higher. In reality, they refuse to. Tell number 4 is the receipt. Around 93% of millionaires in one of the largest studies ever done use coupons at least some of the time. They keep restaurant spending at $200 or less a month. This detail short-circuits people because it feels backwards. Why would someone sitting on $1 million care about 50 cents off a box of pasta? You would think a person at that level had earned permission to stop. They do not see it as deprivation at all. To them, $1 saved is $1 sent off to work, and they never abandon the habit that built the account in the first place. The coupon is not evidence of being broke. It is a fingerprint of the exact discipline that grew the wealth you cannot see. Tell number 5 is the silence. Your quiet millionaire does not narrate their money. No casual mention of the returns, no performance of the new purchase, no little speech about arriving. They tend to stay in the same community for decades, drive the same routes, eat at the same unremarkable places. The hush itself is the giveaway. The loudest person at the party about their finances is almost never the richest one standing in the room. Tell number 6 is the debt that is not there. The wealthy household tends to owe nobody. No balance carried on the card month to month. No payment plan on the furniture. Often no mortgage left at all because they attacked it early and killed it. The flashy household 3 doors down may control more impressive-looking things, but a frightening share of those things belong to a bank. Ownership is quiet, debt is loud, and it wears a very convincing costume. Which brings us back to that couple with the SUV and the boat, because their story is the warning underneath all 6 tells. From the street, they look like the winners. Walk through the math, though, and a different picture appears. That SUV is leased, a payment that never ends and never turns into anything they own. The boat rides on a loan of its own. Their big house carries a mortgage so large that it eats 1/3 of what they bring home before a single other bill even arrives. Their lives are stitched together out of monthly payments and the whole quilt only holds as long as both paychecks keep landing exactly on time. Now imagine one layoff, one bad quarter, one surprise that knocks a single income offline for 90 days. The household with the faded shirt absorbs that hit without blinking, because the gap they protected for years became a cushion. The household that looks rich starts selling things fast at a loss because they were never wealthy. They were leveraged, and leverage looks identical to wealth right up until the month it does not. If even one of those tells dropped a specific face into your mind, someone you have quietly underestimated for years, that recognition is the whole machine snapping into focus. Now let me show you who these people actually turn out to be, because the data lands far more reassuring than you would ever guess. A stubborn fantasy says millionaires are a separate species. Trust fund kids, lottery winners, people who started 3 steps ahead and merely coasted to the finish line. The largest study of millionaires ever run, a survey of more than 10,000 of them, dismantles that fantasy piece by piece. 79% of American millionaires received no inheritance at all, not $1. 89% are first-generation rich, meaning they built the whole thing themselves, starting from a place that was not wealthy. Only 3% ever inherited $1 million or more. The story you absorbed, that the rich mostly begin rich, holds true for a sliver so thin it barely registers on the chart. So what do they actually do for a living? Steady yourself, because the answer borders on comedy. The careers that mint the most millionaires, in order, are engineer, accountant, teacher, business and sales, and attorney. Engineer right at the top. Teacher comfortably inside the top 5, sitting ahead of medical doctor, which never even cracked the list. Let that one breathe for a second. A profession famous for paying poorly produces more millionaires than the profession famous for paying the most. That single fact carries the entire lesson of this video folded inside it. The wealth was never about the size of the paycheck. It was always about what happened to the paycheck once it landed. Take a teacher like Gloria. 30 years in a public middle school, never once breaking past a high 5-figure salary, never a windfall, never a rich relative. What she did have was a payroll deduction she set up in her 20s and then ignored for 3 decades, a paid-off little house, and a stubborn refusal to let her spending climb every time her pay nudged up. Gloria retired with more than $1 million and a pension on top, and the parents of her students would have been stunned to hear it. To them, she was just the nice lady in the same modest car who taught their kids fractions. She was, the entire time, the richest person at back-to-school night. The data keeps getting friendlier. Roughly 1 in 3 of those millionaires never once earned a 6-figure income in a single year of their working life. Most never set foot in an elite private school. The overwhelming majority passed through ordinary state universities, the same ones in your state, charging the same tuition your kids might face. Nobody slipped them a secret. No rocket of a salary lifted them. They ran the boring machine, the gap between earning and spending, and they ran it for decades without blinking. If everyday people pulling everyday salaries can land here, the only real question left is what carries them. And this is the moment to say it plainly. If this breakdown is earning its keep for you, take a second to subscribe, because making the invisible parts of money visible is the entire reason this channel exists, and the vehicle these millionaires use is probably already sitting inside your own paycheck. That vehicle is almost laughably ordinary. 8 out of 10 of those millionaires built their fortune through a plain workplace retirement account, the 401k. Nothing exotic anywhere in the recipe. No secret hedge fund, no private deal, no insider edge. They contributed steadily, grabbed the employer match whenever it was offered, refused to flinch through every terrifying headline, and let time and compounding carry the load. Run the match math on a regular salary and it stops feeling modest fast. Put in a few thousand a year, add an employer match on top, leave it untouched for 30 years at 7%, and that ordinary account swells toward $800,000 on its own. The proof keeps surfacing in the data too. The number of everyday Americans holding $1 million or more inside a single 401k recently pushed past 530,000 people, a jump of more than a quarter in just 1 year. Not founders, not financiers, just the quiet saver in the cubicle beside yours. One more boring foundation sits underneath most of them, and it tends to be the family home. A homeowner in this country carries a median net worth somewhere around $400,000. A renter, by comparison, sits near $10,400. That works out to a gap of nearly 40 to 1, and most of it traces back to a single mechanism. A mortgage payment quietly forces savings every month by converting a payment into ownership, while rent simply vanishes into someone else's balance sheet. The quiet millionaire grasped that early, bought a reasonable place they could comfortably handle, and let 3 decades of payments turn into an asset that was fully theirs. So if the path really is this plain, this available, this unglamorous, why do so few people ever walk it? Why is only 1 in 11 households a millionaire when the formula fits on an index card? The answer is the trap, and the trap was built specifically to swallow the people who earn the most. This is the stretch that should make a few high earners squirm. A large income feels like wealth. It feels like the game is already won, like the accumulation will simply handle itself from here. So the spending rises to meet the income, dollar for dollar. Researchers handed these folks a blunt label. They call them under-accumulators of wealth. Think of the doctors, the lawyers, the executives whose lives match the glossy brochure while their balance sheets sit hollow. They carry the income of the rich and the net worth of the broke. And the canyon between those two facts hides behind a genuinely convincing performance. A clean way exists to measure whether someone has tumbled into that trap, and you can run it on yourself in about 10 seconds. The researcher who mapped all of this left behind a formula. Take a person's age, multiply it by their yearly pre-tax income, then divide by 10. The result is roughly the net worth they ought to be holding by now. A 45-year-old household earning $250,000 a year should be sitting on around $1,125,000. To rank as a genuinely strong accumulator, the kind your quiet neighbor actually is, you want to be standing at double that expected figure. Now run it on Denise from earlier. High income, thin savings, a net worth nowhere near where the formula says it belongs. By this yardstick, the household that looks richest on the street is quietly flunking the test, while Walter, the lawnmower, is doubling it. Lifestyle creep is the silent thief behind all of it. It almost never shows up as one dramatic decision. It seeps in. A raise becomes a nicer car. A bonus becomes a standing dinner reservation. The promotion that should have widened the gap instead bankrolls a lifestyle that eats the raise whole, and a year later the person earns more while keeping exactly the same or even less. Each upgrade looked small in the moment. None of them felt like the day everything quietly went sideways. Stack them across a decade, and they become the entire reason a household can earn millions over a career and still arrive at retirement with almost nothing to show for the journey. Run the cost honestly, and it stings. $1,000 a month of lifestyle creep invested instead for 30 years at 7% would have grown past $1,200,000. The upgraded life never felt like $1 million decision. It simply was one, paid in tiny invisible installments. The cruelest twist in the trap is how flawless it looks from outside while it quietly fails. That under-accumulator is the very neighbor everyone envies. Big house, rotating new cars, trips lighting up the timeline. Everybody assumes they have it solved. Meanwhile, the actually wealthy household next door, the one nobody envies for a second, compounds silently past all of them. Appearances and account balances run in opposite directions far more often than anyone admits. And now you know precisely which of the two to trust. Which leaves the strangest question in the whole story. If these quiet millionaires can obviously afford to show off, if the money is genuinely sitting right there, why on earth would they choose to look broke? The looking broke is not an oversight or an accident. For most of them, it is a deliberate decision. And the reasoning behind it is the sharpest financial thinking anywhere in this video. Start with what flashy spending actually purchases. When somebody leases the status car, drapes on the logos, and books the visible table, they are not really buying transportation or fabric or a meal. They are buying other people's perception of them. Every dollar spent above what the thing is genuinely worth is a payment toward a feeling, the feeling of being seen as successful. The quiet millionaire studied that trade and rejected it. They decided, early and on purpose, that they would rather own the money than rent the admiration of strangers who will never once help pay a bill. Stop performing wealth, and a staggering amount of it simply stays in your hands. Then there is what the money quietly becomes once you stop burning it on a show. The wealthy near you tend to build something researchers nicknamed the Freedom Fund, a stockpile big enough that they could walk away from a job, a toxic boss, or a brutal year and remain completely fine. That cushion rewires how a person moves through the world. It dissolves the low hum of fear that runs underneath most people's lives. Your quiet millionaire is not richer in spending. They are richer in options, richer in sleep, richer in the calm of knowing a single bad month cannot end them. That calm is the thing they actually bought, and it outvalues any badge bolted to the front of a hood. Ask one of them what the money is actually for, and you will rarely get a number back. You will get a feeling instead, the freedom of not having to ask the price, not having to take the bad job, not having to fear the layoff notice. That is the real luxury sitting underneath the faded shirt, and it never once shows up in a driveway. There is a quieter discipline hiding in how they raise their families. Too, Stanley, the researcher behind most of this, found something counterintuitive about the genuinely wealthy and their kids. The truly rich tend to give their children less, not more. They are wary of what he called economic outpatient care, the steady stream of gifts and bailouts that wealthy parents hand down, because they watched it quietly weaken the very independence that built the family fortune. The flashy household often funds an adult child's lifestyle as a kind of status display. The quiet household teaches that same child to protect their own gap. One approach raises a dependent. The other raises an heir who does not actually need the inheritance, which is precisely why they tend to grow it. A simple honesty runs through all of it. The person who looks broke and is rich has made peace with being underestimated. They owe nothing to the audience in the checkout line, because the only scoreboard they care about is private, sitting in an account climbing every month. The person who looks rich and is broke is doing the precise opposite, spending real money to manage a story for an audience that was never paying attention to begin with. One of them walks around free. The other walks around performing. From the curb, the two appear to have swapped places, and that confusion is the entire secret hiding on your street. Before you go hunting for these people on your block, turn the lens around for a second, because the most useful person to spot is yourself. 2 quick questions cut straight to the truth. First, what is your gap? Not your salary, not your job title, but the actual distance between what lands in your account each month and what leaves it. If you genuinely do not know that number, you are flying blind, and the leveraged neighbors are a live demonstration of where blind flying tends to end. Second, run that formula on your own household. Your age times your yearly income divided by 10 gives you roughly where your net worth ought to be sitting right now. Land above it and you are quietly winning whatever the car in your driveway looks like. Land below it and the gap is trying to tell you something. Neither of those answers requires a bigger paycheck to fix. Both of them respond only to the single lever you have controlled this entire time, the one Walter guarded and Denise ignored. So circle all the way back to that man mowing his lawn in the faded shirt, the dented sedan, the cereal coupon. You may have opened this video feeling a small flicker of pity for him, the same pity his neighbors carry. You should be taking notes instead. He is not behind. Nothing about him is struggling. The man simply cracked the one code that the loud, least, logo-covered world spends a fortune trying to keep you from noticing, which is that wealth is the money you do not spend, quietly multiplying where no one can see it. That is the millionaire next door, and from this moment forward, you can spot him. But spotting one is a long way from becoming one, and that distance is exactly where most people stall out. They finish a video like this, they feel the jolt of recognition, and then nothing in their life actually changes, because seeing the machine and running the machine are two very different acts. Everything you just learned rests on a foundation underneath it, the basic mechanics of how money truly behaves, how debt either compounds against you or finally gets out of your way, why a 401k and an employer match turn ordinary paychecks into a seven-figure result, what interest quietly does for you the instant you own assets, and to you the instant you owe, and how to build automatic systems so the right choice happens without you ever having to summon willpower on a hard morning. Your quiet millionaire was not born understanding any of that. They learned it, usually the slow and boring way, one piece at a time. That groundwork is the real starting line, the part that has to come before any of the spotting or the strategizing means a thing. I put together a full walkthrough of exactly that foundation. The financial literacy the school system somehow never taught a single one of us. And if anything in these last few minutes lit even a small fire in you, that walkthrough is the honest next step. It will be waiting whenever you are ready to stop watching the wealthy from the curb and start quietly building your own on your own street in your own faded shirt if that is what it takes.